Welcome to another segment of the Pickled Punks. So let's just say, for instance, at the end of the movie, they give out all the time in the world. This actually is reference to a conspiracy theory I brought up in a previous episode. I don't know if you guys remember that. My conspiracy.
You bring those up a lot.
There's a conspiracy theory that the government might have the solution to eternal life, but even if they did, they wouldn't share it, because if everyone could live forever, then
we'd all go to shit.
We would collapse into ourselves. And so I think that's kind of what I got out of the movie, and the idea of giving out time indefinitely could cause a problem. And the only reason is because you actually buy stuff with the money. It's not so much that you just like live forever. Not only you live forever, you also have to buy stuff. Well, I guess that would make the time eventually run down. But anyways, how you think the world would work if under this concept that is painted in the movie?
I guess one of the premises of the movie is that you have to make people work by artificially shortening their lifespans. So one of the assumptions of that is that there are jobs that no one would choose to do unless they were forced to do it, because if they didn't do it to make money, they would die. And I would raise some questions about that assumption. Like, if there's industry to be done, maybe people are into that. Maybe there's people that would do that willingly, but there's also automation and robots that could be made to do that. If there's buildings that need to be built, there's probably people that want to do that. Maybe not 8 hours a day under a stern boss or whatever, but there's probably people who enjoy being outside and who enjoy building things who might chip in and do it 2 hours a day. So the whole premise of the movie, that you have to twist people's arms to do anything productive, to have a productive society, you have to artificially shorten people's lifespans. Seems questionable.
Here's my idea. I think this goes back to the capitalism idea. So the reason why the people who are really rich can stay rich is because they're basically increasing the cost of living for those that don't have much time. And so that makes them work more and stay in that mode. But if everyone had the exact same amount of time, then the costs across the board would even out. So if I'm the richest dude in the world and I got 1 billion hours, and I'm the poorest guy in the world, and now I have 1 billion hours, now we're the same guy, essentially. There's no difference between the two of us. And I think that's why, like, in the movie, or they were like giving out some batches of time, but they felt, this isn't enough. This isn't enough. How much would it take? Well, it would take an inordinate amount of time, so that the person that has the most has the same as the person that has the least. Then it would be the same, because then the person that has the most still has to pay 100 years for a loaf of bread, and now the person that has the least has the same amount to pay. And I can now go into the really expensive time zone, and now everything's equalized.
I didn't really understand that.
But they don't have that money. Even if you're the poorest person, you don't have $100 to spend on bread.
And that's why they were kind of going around and trying. I think when they were saying this isn't enough time, that's when they went to the head guy and got his first million or billion and gave that away. And that's why they continue to go around and rob more time banks, because it would require that there's an even amount of time for each person for it to equalize. I was reading an article about saving rates, and they were talking about in America, like, no one saves money. And they were talking about it from class to class. And they were saying that, like, if under a certain income level, you don't really save any amount of your money, or 1% to 5%. But then when you got into the upper incomes, people were saving an upwards of 40% of their incomes.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And so
we can only spend so much, right?
And that's sort of the idea, is that, like, and I'm not suggesting that there should be, an even exchange of money, but if instead of them saving 40% of their income, you say, okay, well, you can save 7 or 10% of your income, and the remainder of 30% is obviously something you don't need, so it'll be repossessed and then redistributed. So that's sort of the same idea of this.
This guy's a commie.
The same idea
of
this movie is that you're basically repossessing that money that people don't necessarily need and giving it to the people that don't have enough to save.
Another thing this movie didn't explore was taxation. Like, taxation is a tool that the government uses to redistribute wealth. That's one of the reasons the government taxes us. So that's another part of this that.
But taxes did exist.
Yeah, I remember
when he bought the car.
I do remember that scene, but that was just like I thought just a throwaway line, like,
right.
Oh, it's 5 weeks plus tax. Like, there was no exploration of that concept. Like we the capitalists, if you want to accept the terms of the critique, the capitalists do milk the poor, but there's also a government, a third party that establishes, social security nets and minimum wages and things like that, and has programs for the poor, and that aspect of the economy wasn't involved in the movie as far as I could tell.
Yeah, it was mentioned at one point, but they didn't say how it was used specifically. Yeah. Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of parts that aren't really explained. So it was a two-dimensional account of what could be a very complex movie. I mean, this movie, if you really wanted to get down with it, could be like a 6-hour, 8-hour movie to explain all these little finite details, because it'd be like Lord of the Rings.
Well, I mean, it's billed as a sci-fi movie and a dystopian movie. If it's gonna make you think about society and worry about where society could go as a capitalist society, if it's going to be a dystopian movie, I think it has to actually effectively grab you and move you and make you think about that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if it was a good movie, they wouldn't have all those ridiculous scenes, those really dramatic scenes that were unnecessary. Some of the puns would have been removed, although I think some of them in that type of environment, they wouldn't even be puns. They would be like actual sayings people would say. But yeah, if to make it an interesting movie that would hold your attention, they would have to address a lot of these concepts that we've kind of brought up.